All right. So just to give you a little introduction, so I'm Ashley. I founder of Traverse Journeys, and we've got Joy with us. She's our first mate, sailing captain. So we're super excited to have her on the call today. Joy, I'll let you say a little hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you. I'm excited to talk about Greece and sailing these beautiful islands.
Awesome. So before we get started, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Traverse. So we talk a lot about people, planet, purpose. And so what that means for us is like human to human experiences, like conversations, getting to know locals, supporting local communities, supporting like local vendors, like our guides and artisans, and like really having these meaningful interactions. And with that, we're also looking at like how can we be sustainable in our travel, whether that's like mitigating plastic waste on our trips, protecting gorgeous landscapes, really being a part of nature. If we're hiking, leave no trace. And then also purpose. And so every trip of ours, we have a community partner that we do some kind of engagement with. They're doing all kinds of wonderful things in their community by and for their community, and a percentage of sales goes to that partner. And also with purpose, we really look at travel as a transformative experience, both for you and for the communities that you're visiting. So without further ado, we will talk a little bit about Greece. So I'm sure that you know kind of like the map, but just to orient yourself a little bit here, we're talking about like Greece here in the context of Europe. You can kind of see it in like some of the different eras of time that it's been through. And as we know, like the capital is Athens. Greek history goes back incredibly far. On the trip, like this particular trip, there are a lot of elements of Greek history that you'll learn through like art and architecture. So a lot of the places that we visit have some really ancient ruins that are really, really cool to visit. So one of the things that we love to do as we're on the trip is like if you bring a guidebook, or if you're normally we would have like local guides on our trip that would tell you a lot more about the history. In the case of the sailing experience, we are stopping at some really cool islands with unique tidbits of history and that's how we learn from them on this particular trip. So Greece as a country has like an incredible amount of islands. About 227 of them are inhabited. You know, we think of Greece and we think of these like beautiful islands, but also remember that like 80% of the country is mountainous and it actually can snow. We've been seeing more and more like hot, dry summers. Like this summer was scorching. In fact, you might have heard of some of the wildfires in Greece. So summertime does get quite hot there. Here are some of like very iconic pictures, I would say, of Greece that you can see. So some of the beautiful sailing destinations, but then some of the mountains. So there's a lot of diverse landscapes in Greece as well. So I'm not a history major, or like not my area of expertise. So I don't want to go in too far into the history of Greece because there's so much you can read about. But I do want to just kind of like outline a few of the key pieces that come into play when you're traveling there and when you're going to be sailing around the islands. So, you know, as you might know, like there's so much history in Athens as a seat of democracy. A lot of the math and science that we know today has roots in ancient Greece, as well as like the philosophy. And one of the cool things on this particular itinerary that we talk about is theater. So part of like kind of the development of this trip actually had a lot to do with theater because of the historic sites and like some of the ruins that are on some of the islands that date back to a lot of the theatrical days of Greek history. So when we look at each place that we visit, one of the things we really want to look at as like a mindful traveler is the culture. And one of the key things that really stands out about Greece as a culture is what we call a collectivist culture. So meaning like thinking in terms of we instead of me. So you'll see in Greece, and it might not come as any surprise, you might know this, like there's this very high emphasis on family and relationships. So you'll see, just as an example, like our captain Babis, like it feels like he knows everyone. We get to an island and he's like calling people. He's like, I got a winery to send you. I'm gonna call the bike guy. We're gonna get that set up so they're ready for you to ride when you arrive. So it's a really fun experience, you know, in terms of like culture, you really feel like folded into all of that. And, among those values come like relationships. So, a great example in culture. So, Babis, our captain, likes to call it, what did he call it? Joy, Greek something time. Greek
Oh,
maybe.
Greek maybe time.
Yeah, Greek maybe time. So, like, one of the things in Greece is like relationships are so highly valued. That means that maybe like time is a little bit less of an emphasis. So, like, you might run late to something because before you were with like an important person and spending that time with them. So, groups and like loyalty to family or groups is very important. And society wise, it's what we call like a feminine society. Doesn't have anything to do with like male, female. What it means is like working to live rather than living to work is something that you see in a more masculine society where it's driven by like competition. So you'll also see in Greece, like hospitality is a huge cultural value. It's so welcoming, offering you drinks or food or tea or coffee. Like that's something that you're likely to very much run into in Greece. And there's these like kind of ideas, like of doing things with soul. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, but Marikai, to do something with soul and creativity, or the spirit of joy that like permeates all aspects of kind of life, even if it's work. So those are some of the things that we really love. Just from like a religious aspect, it's like 90% Greek Orthodox, which you'll see in like a lot of day-to-day rituals in people's lives. You'll see these like ornate churches with a lot of history. So that's something that like will play out in a lot of the sites that you'll visit. So that without further ado on like kind of the little introduction to Greece, let's talk about where we're going. So actually, Joy, can I tell you, or can I hand it over to you for a minute? Tell us a little bit about the Saronic Gulf.
So the Saronic Gulf are pretty accessible islands straight from Athens, which is one of the attractions. They're less crowded than some of the more popular places that you've heard of, like Mykonos or Santorini. And the people are very, very friendly, warm. Uh, the islands are just as beautiful. We sail a little, they're kind of close together, so we can sail maybe an hour or two, or sometimes 3 hours, and then we stop for swimming. We'll have lunch on the boat and go swimming, paddle boards on the boats, and then we go to our destination of whichever harbor that we go into. And like Ashley said, Babas knows everybody. And one of the reasons why I prefer to have a captain, a Greek captain, is because they are connected and they get us right into these super great spots right inside the harbors, which I can't do. And as an American, and probably as a woman, but he gets us right in. And then these islands are very quaint. It's all about the food and the friendliness of the people and the architecture. Um, they're just really, really great islands compared to the very popular places that are crowded and expensive. And I like these islands a lot.
Yeah. And that's a big part of kind of the sustainability piece, when we are looking at like a trip like this, like how can we do it differently, uniquely, and in a way that the local like economy that's actually helpful. So it's not a strain on these like islands that are like over touristed, but rather like bringing business to these small islands that are off the radar.
It's true.
So here is like our itinerary, and we'll get into kind of like some of the highlights of each of these particular islands. But do you want to just run us through a little quick overview of the islands, Joy?
Sure. So the first stop, these kind of go in the somewhat of the itinerary order, but Aina is a island right off of Athens. That's usually our first stop. They're known for their pistachios, and also the uh, Temple of Aphaia, which is one of the ruins that is very popular. And we make sure we go get everyone to see that and have some time to shop, get pistachios, and we spend the night in town there. I think that's also the place for the welcome dinner, which is a yacht club right on the harbor there, which is very, very pretty and is a super location for sunset. And then Ermione is it's like a working class town. It's a part of the mainland, but very quaint, fishing, lots of fishing, fishermen from all of these places, especially Ermione, a lot of working class people there. And another great location to visit. There's not too many ruins. There's a kind of a walking park, natural park that is very close to the boat. And then there's some shopping and exploring that way. Poros is an island off of the mainland, very, very beautiful. Known for a lot of shopping there, walking around the streets. The boats are kind of moored right off the city, and you can do some hiking there, and actually e-bikes and four-wheelers can be rented at that location. Epidaros is where the amphitheater is, and that's a very quaint little town. Sometimes we take it, depending on the weather, and the weather can often change things a little bit. We've taken cabs from Poros to the amphitheater, and then stopped in the winery on the way back, which is a really, really great winery, a local family that makes wine, and they make very, very good wine, actually. And then Spetses, which is the Santorini of the Saronic Gulf. Very, very beautiful town. We have all of these places, we have a certain selection of restaurants that are the best in the locations, and we typically go back to these places every year because they're just really, really good, and they have a flavor of the local the local dishes that are prepared, and they prepare them very well. So Spetses is also where you can rent e-bikes and ride around the island. It's the furthest destination of all the islands, and then we work our way back.
Yeah, exactly. So this is an example of like some time with Joy and Babis. I'm going to play videos as I'm talking, but like, so when we first get on the boat, like Captain Babis shows us kind of the lay of the land. Like Joy said, there can be times where like maybe the weather will dictate the exact route. So, the route we take could be a little subject to change. You see him showing us the map.
See, the wave's not very big. Okay. So we are remember to stay very close because
and then this is what the boat itself looks like. So we've chosen this particular itinerary to definitely be like a small boat format because it's a really like, we're going to little islands. We wouldn't want to have like, 20 people or 50 people just be dumped onto these islands at one time. So it's a really much more like sustainable way to have this small group of us, so be able to get into the harbor. Joy, do you want to explain what kind of boat this is and kind of the layout?
Yeah, it's a Lagoon 52, and it's got 4 doubles, pretty large doubles compared to, and they each have their own private head, which is a bath. And then it's got cruise quarters, a set of bunk beds with its own bath, and then a couple of spots up on the bow. But this is one of the more comfortable boats that I've ever chartered. And one of the reasons is all the real estate on the front there where people can kind of spread out. And then the company that we use actually put beanbag chairs on all their boats, which is a really nice feature because it just adds another seating area for someone. And the boats aren't crowded at all because they're so big. Even with, even if you had, I think this boat can accommodate 12 people, but even if you had 12 people on it, you'd still have plenty of room. And we don't, right? Ashley, Traverse puts, minimal people on, which is great.
Yeah, we max the boat out to 8 people for clients, and then there's Captain Babis and Joy. So that's kind of how we max it out. And you can see the common areas here. So like on the kitchen area, the dining area. That's where we do like the breakfast preparations. You can see kind of like this outdoor seating area that we have. So there's lots of comfortable spaces. You can go to the front of the boat, catch some sun, can sit around and eat here. Joy, is there anything you want to add on this interior part?
It's a really great interior space for, relaxing. You can, like Ashley said, we put there's plenty of room to put all the food out for breakfast and lunch, and people just kind of take their stuff to whatever spot they want. And yeah, there's lots of room. And not to mention there's really good Wi-Fi on the boat. So, people are always connected in and can post or, read their emails, whatever they have to do. But this is a very, very comfortable boat. And well, the other thing is you can plug in. Most boats have a generator that you have to put on in order to plug your stuff in to keep the batteries charged. This particular boat has what's called an inverter, and you can plug in anytime at any place and it's going to work. So that's a nice feature on a boat.
Yeah, awesome. And then you can see the rooms here. So like how we have it, you can sign up, like you might sign up as a couple. So that means that we would make the bed so that there's like one bedspread for two people. Or if you sign up either with a friend or you sign up individually for double occupancy, we would make this into two beds. So it is two separate mattresses no matter what. It's just a matter of how we make up the beds with the comforters. So I like to kind of think of it as, these are quite spacious rooms for a boat in and of itself. But I also like to think of it or position it as like, think of, you're kind of camping. It is a small space compared to a hotel room, but you're on a boat, you're not really spending that much time in the room. You're sleeping there and then you're out, on the deck and swimming and like out exploring the towns. So Joy, you want to add anything about the rooms?
Well, if you are two single people, you'll get your own set of sheets and blanket and stuff like that. So you'll have your own set of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like the boat portion of it. So just for like the sailing experience itself, just to give you kind of like an idea of how it works. So everyone starts and ends in Athens. We do a night in Athens, like at a hotel first, because we learned the hard way. The first round that we did this trip is like, sometimes flights get delayed and we don't want to be rushed because we take off on our sailing portion, like on a Sunday morning. So that way, if everyone's in Athens, even if there's a flight delay on Saturday, we're all good to go. We can just like not have to stress and get to the boat on Sunday morning. So then we've got Captain Bobbis, we've got Joy. We get to explore these lesser known islands. Each day there's stops for like snorkeling and sup. We do breakfast and lunch on board. I put a small group 10 packs, including Bobbis and Joy. It's eight clients. So also make sure you book early because it does fill up. And this picture is that sunset that we were mentioning for the welcome dinner, like a really ideal spot. It's really, really gorgeous. So we can get into a little bit of the islands first. Joy gave us a little bit of an overview, but you can see like Aina is the one that's famous for its pistachios, which is really cool to see how they're grown. And you see pistachio vendors everywhere. Great spot to stock up for that. This Doric temple is really fascinating. And that's one of the great things I think about this itinerary is each place has these really ancient historic sites. So it's really nice to like, be on the water and get that experience, but then come onto land and like get to see these really incredible places that aren't just like overflowing with people. Is there anything you want to add on Aina, Joy?
No, it's beautiful. It's one of the, I particularly like that the welcome dinner is there because it's such a beautiful place where the boat is, and to watch the sunset. It's a great introduction to our sail, the start of our sail.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. And then these aren't necessarily in the sailing order. As we said, it can change according to the weather, but just to give you some kind of visuals. So like Spetses is one of the ones where we can go e-biking and there's like beautiful scenery. You can e-bike, or I chose to challenge myself and get a regular bike. I will say it was definitely challenging, but it was doable. I can't remember, Joy, the distance around. I think it's something like 20 kilometers around the island or something.
Yeah, but it's funny. Bob has said it was an hour or something. I don't know if it was on your trip, but I remember he said it last year, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think it's a
No.
little more than an hour. But in
Yeah.
any case, it's very beautiful, and yeah.
Yeah. Something super fun to do. And then Ermione, this is the one with this like beautiful little chapel, quaint village area, super pretty houses. Love the like just strolling around. It really brings you to like feeling like you're in Greece. Anything you want to add for this one, Joy?
It has its charm because of it being a working class. You run into a lot of people that work for a living there, and the fishermen that come in and out. And I wanted to mention about oh, I forget, but anyhow, yeah, it's a good this is it's part of the mainland, so it's a little bit different than some of the islands, but just as interesting.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So a little takeoff. And then Poros and Hydra are two places where you get some beach time. You really get to like step back into time on the islands. I have another picture here. So there's so many spots that you can just like wander in like this beautiful, housing and colors with the whites and like the little pops of color. Joy, anything you'd like to add?
Well, they're very different islands, but also, very pretty. Hydra has the donkeys. There's no cars allowed on the island. Everybody, things have to be taken up into the hills by donkey. And they're actually very, they're getting more and more aware of animal rights or whatever. I guess it was a problem years ago, but it's not anymore. They're pretty well taken care of. And they're very different. Hydra has some great hiking along the outside and with incredible views of the downtown area. And then Poros, same thing. You can hike up to this clock tower and or take e-bikes or four-wheelers around.
Yeah, some really beautiful places. And then Epidavros is the one where Joy mentioned there's this amphitheater that dates back to the 4th century, and as well as a sanctuary. And like I can't remember the exact story, but like the story is that it's a healing spot. And so people like back in those early centuries would come to the sanctuary for healing as well. And so there's a lot of history. And this is where I was saying earlier that, I'm not a Greek guide, so I'm not going to be able to give you the whole history. But what's great about visiting these places is that they're stock full of like, information signs where you can really read deep into the history, and then you get to feel it and experience. You can climb up, this amphitheater. There's not tons of people there. So it's just a really great way to not just like learn about the history, but actually like absorb it. And like in this picture, you can see people standing at the bottom of the amphitheater. They're actually yelling. So to hear how it resonates, like the acoustics, which is really incredible in this particular one. Joy, do you want to add anything?
Well, what I was, someone mentioned last year was the reason this was built was to perform medical healing on bodies or, on people in that circle below. And so hundreds of people would come to watch operations or whatever, and they could hear what was happening below, at that time. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's really cool. I didn't catch that. That's a really cool one. See, I love learning about all these things. And then then we talked about the winery that Captain Bobbis is super connected to. They're family owned, focusing on natural wines. They do a tasting. So this is a really great experience that you can choose to do, and you can decide in the moment if you want to, but while we're there, but it's definitely one that I would recommend. So it's so cool how like the owner here, he's showing us like some of the old techniques that they would use with the jars. You really get to like see the vineyards, taste the wines, and like learn about this really ancient style and practice of like winery. So this is a few of us from last year enjoying some wine. And then Joy, you went this year, right?
I did, and I was really happy that I went. I'm not a big wine drinker, so but I was very impressed with the wine that they had there, and the presentation that they did. So yeah, it's definitely it's on the map all the time now.
Yeah, one not to miss for sure.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got all of the water activities. We sent one of our guests, Corey, out to Anchor. One of the fun things about being on the boat with Joy is if you want to learn about, sailing, if you want to try your hand at some of the things, you can actually get involved too. So that's one of the fun benefits of being on like a small boat, and some of the learning that you get to do. And then all of these outdoor activities. Joy, is there anything you want to add?
No, Bobbis has a way of, he's got this incredible whistle, and I witnessed him whistling to dolphin that were kind of far away, and they came to the boat, and started, going with us. It was pretty amazing. I'd never seen that before.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. The ocean life. Sorry.
And the water's really, really clear. It's very clear. It's actually, these don't do it justice of the color of the water. The water's really beautiful.
It really is incredible water, that is for sure. So this is all of us. I think this was our last night, last year's trip. So just enjoying, I think it was a little Greek aperitivo of some kind, mastique maybe.
Yep.
So, and like we do a farewell dinner back in Athens. So you can see we've got a great little spot, one of our little secret spots. So just to kind of talk about food, because food is such a big part of Greek culture, and it's also a big part of the stuff that we love to do at Traverse is give you great food on trips. So kind of a few things that you'll find. I mean, Greek food varies a lot, obviously, between the mountain regions and Athens itself and the islands. But a few things, that you can generally expect: a lot of soups and stews. If you're near the ocean, seafoods of all kind. There's all kinds of cured meats and cheeses. I'm sure everyone probably knows feta. Of course, there's olives, a lot of that Mediterranean seasonal fruits and vegetables and citrus. In the mornings, Greek breakfast, traditionally would be maybe more like a coffee and pastry. In terms of the food that we serve on the trips, so we include breakfast each morning, and we try and keep it very kind of seasonal and also to the local fare. So we'll do stuff like eggs or seasonal greens. We'll have some, maybe protein choices, whatever fruits are in season. We'll have a bunch of those. We'll have coffee, Greek mountain tea, which is a delicious herb from the mountains that is super good for you. So we try and introduce you also to all of these local little delicious things, like some of the delicious local pastries, for example. Because of the Ottoman influence in Greek food and Greek culture, you'll see a lot of things like baklavas that might be familiar to you, or the Greek pastries that are made with a phyllo dough and maybe some spinach and feta cheese, that kind of thing. And then just for, dietary restrictions, so to kind of let you know, vegan and vegetarian, generally speaking, in Greece can be a little challenging because they do have a lot of heavier foods that'll include those. However, when we're making the meals on the boat, and Joy does a fantastic job. Our lunches are light fare, and a lot of lentils for protein. That's a really good one for us to make. Remembering we're on a boat, so can't make huge meals, but really delicious, healthy, light, good food. Joy, you want to say some of the other things that you make on the boat?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's some kind of salads. The Greek cheeses are so good. We put those out. We make Greek salads. We make orzo salads with lemon and spinach. And then we make, we'll put fixings out for people to make wraps if they want. I mean, you certainly won't go hungry, but we like to add as much Greek flair as we can to the food, or to the, lunches, breakfast and lunches. And I really like that Ashley has always introduced the local fare on the boat. Every day we go out and get the pastries, the mastika, things like that are introduced. They're on the boat so that you can sample these things while you're there. So it's a whole nother layer of getting involved in Greece and sailing. It's not just Greek sailing. It's really getting involved in the other layers of the foods and the kind of foods that people eat, as well as the
Yeah.
history and everything. But I always like that about your trips, Ashley, is that you focus a lot on the local foods, which is great.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I think it's super fun. I think one of my favorite things, and that like really applies to this itinerary, is like, if you're on this island, Aina, I never pronounce it quite the right, Aina, and they grow pistachios and these beautiful, delicious local pistachios, like let's load up on those and have them as snacks. So there's so many great opportunities, and if you eat fish, like in the evenings, we include the welcome dinner and the farewell dinner. And then during the middle part of the itinerary, you get like freedom to go where you want. We have recommendations. You pretty much can't go wrong. Most guests like to go together, and that way you can get like all these different things and maybe share things. So it's a really fun experience. And it's kind of like the Greek way too, to have this like kind of nice leisurely dinner where you're having all this, kind of delicious food. So pescatarian is of course very doable. Gluten-free is actually quite easy, I would say. I mean, there are bread products there, but it's easy to get like rice, potatoes for your carbs sources. Here's kind of some examples of like some stuff. We'll have some like Greek greens with lemon, some toasted nuts, some feta cheese. We've got like some bread selection, like oranges were in season. So these are kind of like all, examples of like the nice, light, refreshing fare that you'll have on the boats. We always tell people it's a good idea too, if you're, attached to certain foods, bring some bars with you or bring some snacks with you. But of course, there are grocery stores on the island too, if you wanted to go buy something for yourself. But like Joy said, you're not going to go hungry. There's lots of good options for you. So, and then here's an example of one of our dinners that you can see, just like a beautiful sunset, enjoying some delicious drinks. And then on the right here, this is moussaka. So when you're on the islands, expect maybe 20 to 30 euros per person, including wine, which you're getting tons of food for that. Just a little cultural tip, and this is something we like to let people know about, educate about. Because remember when I talked about a collectivist culture and this idea of thinking of we instead of me, like they'll typically, if you come together with other guests, even if they're, people you've just met on the trip, they're going to bill you as a group. And culturally, it doesn't quite come across well if you like demand to be, cannot pay individually. And it just like, there are many reasons for that. It could be that the server doesn't have the authority to split the bill. It could be that they're just not used to it. They don't really know how to. They might not have the technical side of it in their system. So typically the easiest way to do it is like one person pays, sort it out amongst yourself. So that's kind of one little food tip that we give to people for the cultural side of things. Do you want to add anything else, Joy? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
No, other than sometimes it's funny because I just came from Croatia and they don't do the family style dinners as much as they do in Greece because of the collectiveness of the community. So it's easy to do family style, and then you get to sample lots of different food for, we usually try to work out a pretty good deal with the restaurant owner. And yeah, that would include table wine. So, and then I think there's sometimes when a few people want to get a fish and then they split that amongst themselves. But yeah, it's pretty easy to go to restaurants as a group and then have it not be so complicated with who got what,
Yeah, and it's fun to share.
Yeah.
So, there we go. So yeah, so just a few other kind of like tips for you, cultural tips. So kind of seasons, weather, I mean, generally the time of year that we're going to be sailing, it's not going to be cold, but rain can happen. It's always good to have layers, for the water and the temperature, like these light and flowy, like linen is a really good choice to have. And like for money, it is helpful to have cash on the islands. I mean, like in the city, credit cards, easy to use. But on the islands, it's still a little like slower pace of life. Having some cash, having some euros is helpful, and you'll want euros for tipping your captain. Joy, do you want to talk a little bit about clothes and tipping and money?
Everything you said is good. The linens are good. I think that because we go on somewhat of a shoulder season. I mean, it was pretty hot when we were there, but not as hot as the middle of the summer, which is when it's most popular and most crowded. So I think that's a bonus to be able to go on a shoulder season when it's not quite so crowded and not quite so hot. The money, you can exchange money just about anywhere if you need money. And then tipping is one of those things where you know, it's up to there's a guide, I guess, for that, but it's pretty much up to the person. And Babis does such a great job that I don't think you'll have any trouble you know, taking care of them.
For sure. And you know, it's a cultural thing too. And we have all kinds of information on in the welcome pack when you book, you know, what we recommend tipping, and it's really appreciated as well, you know, as a gesture of thank you. So we're headed there again next year in May. So if you want to sign up, we do have spots left, but the thing is, remember, it's limited. So get your spots in early for sure. And we're offering a little discount if you do sign up, which I will send out in our, oops, sorry, I went too fast, which I'll send out in the little follow-up for you. And we've got some more events coming up. So make sure you're checking in with emails and sign up if you're interested in some of our future events. And now it's time for questions. Does anyone else have, or does anyone have some questions for us? You can feel free and either type them in the chat, or you can put yourself off mute and ask us directly. No questions? Joy, are there any frequently asked questions that you get?
Not people that are not used to being on a boat may be nervous about that. And I understand, but these boats are so stable because they're so big and they have 2 pontoons that it's really not, it doesn't become an issue at all. That's one thing that comes up. The islands are very accessible to Athens, which is a nice thing. You just, from your hotel, get in a car, get to the boat. We usually take off like within, you know, in the morning when you guys arrive, like within about an hour, we take off. So it's just a nice trip. It's a beautiful way to experience a country, is by water.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And one of the questions actually that comes up, we get emailed, is about like seasickness and like, what do you do, or will I get seasick? And you know, it's going to depend on the person. Obviously, I tend to be more sensitive to that. So there are some medications that you can take, and you take it starting a few days before to kind of build it up in your system. There are also I forget what you call them, but the bands that you put on your wrist, and those help a lot. You can also just kind of keep in mind, like, you know, drinking some ginger tea or having some little like ginger lozenges. There are some other remedies. You can actually put peppermint on your like belly button. That's supposed to help. Just even the smell of peppermint is really helpful. So there are some little tricks that you can use, you know, also just like maybe not being down in the cabin, being up, you know, in sight of the water. That helps a lot as well. So that's another question that we get.
Yeah, it's a nice camaraderie when you're on a boat with other people. I just coming off my last trip, there were 4 people that had never sailed before, and it was really not, they were so excited to be introduced to this way of travel, and they're definitely hooked. They told me they want to go again. But the neat thing was that the camaraderie that happens, and every time we wake up and we have breakfast and then the engines start and we take off for our next destination, people get really excited. Like, where are we going to go today? And what, it's kind of a new thing, that a new exciting day, because you don't know, kind of, you know where you're going, but you don't know what's going to happen along the way. And it's pretty neat to watch that with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can leave you for the day. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Joy, for your time, and Andrea, thank you for handling the back end for all of us. So we will let you go for this round. We'll send a little follow-up email and hope to see everyone again soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.